Grade 9s, I'm going to now do some revision of fractions, which is simplifying an algebraic expression. I will work through 3 examples for you, and then I have an exercise that contains 4 questions that I'd like you to do and have ready for tomorrow's lesson. Right, some things to remember when dealing with fractions. When simplifying an algebraic expression, simplifying a fraction, it means factorize. Okay. You can never cancel over a plus or minus sign. Factorize before simplifying, and division sign means that you must spend time. So those are 3 points to remember when dealing with multiplication and division. So let's look at example 1. 5x squared minus 10xy divided by 15xy. Point number 1, very important. You can never cancel over a plus and a minus sign. So I cannot cancel there because there's a minus sign. The minus sign is basically telling us that you have 2 terms in the numerator, and you cannot cancel over a plus or minus sign. So the only way I can reduce this to 1 term is by factorizing. At the moment you have 2 terms, so let's bring this to 1 term. And when factorizing a fraction, if you remember, you work with the numerator separately and you work with the denominator. In this case, the denominator is 1 term, so there's nothing I can actually do there. But I can work with the numerator by looking for methods of factorization. And the golden rule is to look for a common factor. So 5 and 10, you have the 5 common. You have x and x, so you take the x out as a common factor. And then you also see there's y common. You take the lower power, and that leaves you with 5xy. What are you left with in the bracket? It would be y minus 10 divided by 5, 2. Now I have 1 term, so I can cancel over. So if you look carefully, the x and x cancels. Well, you're actually dividing into each other. What are you left with? 5 goes into 15 3 times. So your remainder is y minus 2 divided by 3. That's the answer. Okay, that's number 1. Let's look at example 2. Now I've brought in 3 fractions separated by multiplication signs. So once again, I am not allowed to cancel over plus or minus signs. So don't think you can go x squared divided by x. No. You've got to factorize first. So let's work with each fraction. So remember the next point here, factorize before simplifying. So we're not even going to worry about that multiplication sign. All I'm doing is looking at each numerator, each denominator, and identifying the methods of factorization and applying them. So x squared plus 5x minus 14. That's a trinomial. If the last term is negative, if you remember your rules, 1 term is positive and 1 term is negative. 1 factor is positive and 1 factor is negative. So what factors of 14 when added will give you 5? So that will be 7 and 2. Remember, the 7 would be positive because you need the 5 to be positive, and you got the 2. So positive 7 times negative 2 gives me my negative 14. Positive 7 minus 2 would give me the positive 5. So we covered there. X minus 3 cannot be factorized, so you merely carry it over. Times x squared plus x minus 12. Here we find another trinomial. So one has to be plus and one has to be minus. So what factors of 12 added will give you 1? That would be 4 and 3. I need a positive x, so the 4 has to be positive. X divided by. Now look here. That's 2 minus x, but in this answer I have x minus 2. So straight away you can see I can rewrite that using the change of sign rule. So if I rewrite that to x minus 2, remember my negative must be attached to that bracket. You can't change the sign here because this is a multiplication. That's multiplication. The 1 is 1. But if you look at this denominator, you need to factorize it, and that would be x bracket x plus 4. Right, once everything is factorized, you are now allowed to simplify. Now simplifying a factorized fraction means you can divide any numerator with any denominator. In other words, cancel them out. But you cannot cancel out numerator with numerator or denominator with denominator. Okay, because the method you're actually doing, you are dividing. Cancelling out in this case means dividing. So if you look carefully, that x minus 3 belongs to that numerator, but it can divide into that. So that falls away. The x plus 4 here can cancel out or divide into that. The x minus 2 there cancels out to that. And that's it. So let's look at the numerator. Now you bring everything together in factorized form, whatever's left over. So what's left over? At the top it's x plus 7 times 1, which will be x plus 7. And at the bottom you have a minus there and an x, which is a minus x. So that's your answer. You can represent this in another way if you take the x to the negative to the top. Remember, with a fraction, the negative sign can go to the bottom, to the top, or next to the fraction. If you take the negative to the top, it would be negative x plus 7 divided, now the x would be positive. Or you can go a step further. Grade 9s, some of you might want to distribute it. So you can go negative x, negative 7 over x. All three are equivalent, just rewritten in different ways. Okay, so that's the multiplication. Let's do one more example for you before I give you an exercise. And I'm going to now throw in a division sign. See, there's a division. There's a division. What happens when you see a division? Immediately it becomes a tip and times. But I advise learners to first factorize before worrying about the sign. Remember, factorize before simplifying. So let's look at x minus 3. X minus 3 remains x minus 3. You can't do anything there. X squared plus 2x minus 15, that's a trinomial. You're going to have 1 plus and 1 minus because of that negative there. So what factors of 15 would give you 2? 5, 10, 5 and 3. I need a positive 2, so the 5 takes the positive and the 3 takes the negative. So there we go. Division, I don't need to factorize there. So I can go immediately to changing that sign. That goes to the top and that goes to the bottom. If I had to factorize, I would factorize first and then in the next step, tip and times. But in this case, there's no factorization needed there. So you can do the tip and times in the step. Remember, tip and times mean swap the numerator and denominator. Don't forget. Once everything is factorized, you can look to see how you could simplify. So a numerator and a denominator. So now if you look at this, everything in the numerator cancelled out. So technically the numerator is 1. Please remember, if everything cancels out, it is still 1. It is not 0 because you are dividing. So you are saying x minus 3 divided by x minus 3. So there is a 1 there. X plus 5 divided by x plus 5. So there is a 1 there. 1 times 1 is 1 divided by x. Lots of learners get something like this wrong because they just say the answer is equal to x. They forget about the fact that the operation used is actually division. Please look out for that. Okay, this is the exercise I've put up for you to do. So once this video ends, you will attempt these 4 questions for the rest of the hour. If there isn't any time left, remember you will do it as homework after the school day. Right, grade 9s, good luck. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.